Have you ever felt predestined for something greater, but life seemed to drag you down, full of struggles and silences? Maybe you have asked yourself, has God forgotten me? Or, why does my time never come? If this pain and this search for a purpose accompany you, know that God chose you and your destiny has been revealed at this moment. Get ready, because you are about to discover why God chose you to prosper now. This message is unmissable and will show you the solution you so long for. Obedience in the dark. Trusting even when we can't see the way. You know that game of blind man's bluff. You are blindfolded and have to trust someone's voice to keep from tripping. Obedience in the dark is very similar to that, but on a much deeper and more important level for our lives. Imagine that God is the voice guiding you. Think about it this way. There have been times in your life when you needed to take a step, make a choice, or follow a path, but you couldn't see anything ahead. It was as if the lights were off. There was no instruction manual, no detailed map. No one was applauding you or saying, "Well done." Sometimes all you heard was silence, or even a lot of doubts in your head. Will this work? Why am I doing this? Many people only obey when everything is clear, when they are sure that it will work, when the results are already visible. It is easy to move forward when the sun is shining and the path is all lit, isn't it? But true faith, the kind that makes God's heart swell with pride, appears when you decide to follow even in total darkness. It is like your child who, even though he is afraid of the dark, holds your hand and walks, trusting that you will take him to a safe place. He does not question where he is going, he just trusts who is leading him. Why is this so special? Because it shows that your trust in God doesn't depend on circumstances. It's not an "I'll follow you if you show me everything." It's an "I'll follow you because you are you, and I know you love me and want the best for me." You don't need a perfect plan, just a word from him. And when that word comes, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone, being alone for a while, or being misunderstood by the people around you, you will. There were times when you wanted to turn your back and give up, right? The pressure was enormous. The path seemed endless. But something deep down, a certainty that only God can place in our spirit, whispered, "Keep going. Don't stop." And you kept going. Not because you weren't afraid, but because you knew that being in God's will is the safest place in the world, much safer than seeking the approval of others. Many people looked at you and thought, "Wow, she is so confident. She knows what she is doing." But what they didn't know is that inside you might be shaking a little, taking one step at a time in pure faith. What looked like confidence on the outside was actually a deep, quiet trust in God on the inside. And for him, this faithfulness, even in weakness, is the greatest strength. God saw every step you took in the dark, every sacrifice no one saw, every silent yes you gave when everything told you to wait, every moment you chose to believe, even though you didn't have all the answers. That kind of obedience never goes unnoticed in heaven. On the contrary, that's why he's lifting you up now. You've shown him that you don't follow him just for the blessings, but for love, for trust, and for a covenant. That's too deep to be shaken by appearances. You obeyed when it was hard, when it hurt, when it gave you no apparent benefit. And that obedience planted a powerful seed in the spiritual world, a seed of unshakable faith that is now bearing fruit. This season of elevation that you are experiencing is not just a random blessing, it is the direct result of what you planted in the unseen. God is lifting you up because you have proven that you can walk without seeing, that you can trust without having all the answers, and that you can move forward without needing anyone's validation. Your obedience in the dark qualified you for promotion in the light. You didn't cut corners, you didn't compromise, you didn't force your own time. You waited for his timing. And now heaven is not just proud, heaven is responding to your faith. Faithfulness in God's silence. When God seems quiet, but he's watching everything you know when you talk and talk and talk, but the other person just doesn't respond. Or when you're waiting for an important message, but your phone stays silent for hours. We start to wonder, did the person see it? Did they forget about me? With God, sometimes it seems the same, doesn't it? The text talks about those periods in your life when you not only went through difficult things, but you survived to them. Long nights with no answers, mornings when heaven seemed a million miles away. You cried out, but the only thing that came back was the echo of your own voice. You asked for direction, but only received silence. It was in those moments when God seemed to be insolent that your faith was truly put to the test. There were nights when you cried yourself to sleep, wondering, has God forgotten me? Doesn't he see what I'm going through? You looked at your life and thought, This doesn't sound at all like the promise he made to me. You saw other people being blessed, doors opening for people who didn't even care about God, while you, who fell, remained in the waiting corridor. This silence was not just a lack of noise, it was a deep pain. It made you question everything, your path, your worth, your prayers, even your own sanity. But even when you couldn't hear him, you kept believing in him. And that's what makes you different, which makes you chosen. You did not serve God for what he gave you, but for who he is. You didn't worship him for the outcome that would come, but you overflowed with worship from your pure trust in him. You prayed even when your prayers seemed unanswered. You praised him even when the pain was immense. You stood firm even when you wanted to run away. And heaven saw it all. Anyone can trust when the path is clear. Anyone can praise when the blessing has already arrived. But it takes a soul deeply rooted to stand in the silence and say, God, I still trust you. You are not walking by sight, but by a spiritual memory, for one alliance and one relationship that are deeper than any emotion and stronger than any circumstance. You haven't always felt strong, but your consistency in the silence was your strength. Every time you held your head up high when it would have been easier to give up. Every time you opened your Bible, even though your heart was heavy. Every time you whispered, God, I don't understand, but I still believe. You were making a powerful statement in the spiritual world. I am unshakable. Friend, these periods of silence were not a punishment. They were preparation. God was watching how you would react without the visible blessings, without the loud miracles, without the recognition. And you passed the test, not because you were perfect, but because remained firm. Now heaven is moving. God is about to reward you not only for your faith, but for your fidelity, for the way you clung to him even when he seemed far away, for the way you refused to give up even when you had every reason to. You thought he was silent because he had abandoned you, but the truth is he was watching it. Grow, the watching it mature, the seeing becoming the person who he could trust the most, because he knew that if you could trust him in the silence, you wouldn't lose your head when the volume of life got louder. If you could stand firm when no one applauded you, you wouldn't become proud when the spotlight came on. If you could worship him in the valley, you would remain humble on the mountaintop. It wasn't about what you could handle, it was about who you were becoming through resistance. And now that you have been refined in silence, God is about to speak loudly through miracles, through elevation, through doors you didn't even knock on. The same silence you once questioned is about to become the stage for your highest testimony. Purity in a corrupted world, the beauty of choosing the clean path. Imagine that the world is a huge banquet full of delicious foods and also some very questionable ones which seem good but can be bad for you. Purity in this scenario is like choosing the healthiest dish, the one that will truly nourish you and not contaminate you, even if everyone around you is eating everything. We live in a time where being good is kind of a joke, right? People think it's old-fashioned and old-fashioned. It's as if society says, oh, relax, a little bit won't hurt, go for it, everyone does it. And then in order to fit in, we feel a lot of pressure to lower our standards, to be like everyone else, to not be the boring one in the group. But you didn't do that. You had the courage to say no when it was easier to say yes. Your values may have been laughed at. They may have called you saintly, exaggerated, too serious. But what the world called too much, heaven called too much, separate. While many people were running after fame, likes, popularity at any cost, you were there quietly protecting your heart. When the world told you to relax, to let go, you pushed your limits. And when temptation came knocking, you didn't flirt with it. You shut the door in its face. It wasn't just about what you did with your body. It was also about what you allowed into your mind, your thoughts, your intentions. You fought for all of it. You didn't let bitterness invade your heart, nor envy poison your soul. You didn't let ambition divert you from your purpose. You stood firm, clean, not to gain applause from men, but because he knew that God was watching every choice. And look, this kind of discipline is not weakness. It is spiritual warfare. You were in a constant battle with your own will, with your feelings, and with everything around you, and yet you came out pure. You couldn't resist temptation once, did you? Repeatedly, in secret, in silence. Even when no one would know if you had slipped, you chose the high road. You honored God in private, and now he is about to honor you in public. Many people think that elevation and growth come only from talent, but God does not promote people only because of the gifts they have. He promotes them because of purity of heart. Because the higher we climb, the more intense the temptations become. If you can't stay pure on the ground, how will you survive in the clouds? That's why your purity is so important. It's not just a moral medal, it's a divine requirement to the level God is about to take you to. He needs people who will not be corrupted by the money, voices who will not sell out, leaders who will not let influence ruin their integrity. You have proven that you can carry a heavy weight without getting drunk on attention, that you can have authority without being arrogant, that you can have power without losing your purity. That's why God is raising you up. The world offered you shortcuts, but you took the long, hard and Santa. And now what God is preparing for you will not only be great, it will be pure. Because He knows you will not worship the blessing, you will worship the one who gave it. This elevation is not just about what you avoided, but about what you protected. Your soul, your calling, your anointing. And now God is about to pour it out on you in ways you can't even imagine. He lifts you up, not just because you are talented, but because you are clean. You are ready, you are reliable, and pure in a world that has tried everything to corrupt you. And heaven is proud. Before continuing, check if you are subscribed to the channel. Only here will you find true prosperity. Abundance through blessing others, reaping what you sow generously. Imagine that life is a garden. Some people wait until they have a bunch of seeds before they start planting. But you did it differently. You planted your seeds even when the packet was almost empty, or when the soil seemed dry and hard. That's what we call bless others when you yourself need a blessing. Let's be honest, there were times when your heart was broken, hurting so much. But even then, you found the strength to help mend someone else's heart. Days when your soul was exhausted, but you became the lifeline for someone who was nearly drowning. You were the one who encouraged while inside I was discouraged, the helper while he was injured, the supporter while fighting his own storms in silence. You gave when you barely had any, and we're not just talking about money. You gave your emotional, your spiritual, your mental. Sometimes all you had was a kind word, and you gave it. Your energy was low, your mind was heavy, your heart was heavy, but you kept showing up for people who had no idea how much your presence there cost. And God saw every bit of it. Nothing you did went unnoticed. Every time you chose the compassion instead of the complaint, the generosity instead of bitterness, the service instead of selfishness, all this was recorded up there in heaven. While people applauded those who made noise and showed off, God smiled at their silent obedience. You weren't performing for an audience, you were pouring for real. And even when no one reciprocated, you didn't stop. That's not weakness, it's spiritual strength, is kingdom character. You weren't just doing good deeds, you were planting seeds. Seeds of compassion, of mercy, of unwavering love, of faith, of intercession. And these seeds were not planted in easy, fertile soil, but in difficult seasons, in dry places and in moments of tiredness. You have become a water well for others while you yourself were thirsty. It was light in dark rooms, joy in heavy environments, peace in the midst of storms of chaos. And the truth is, you didn't have to do that. You could have shut yourself off, become bitter, decided that since no one was helping you, you wouldn't help anyone. But you didn't. You kept giving, loving, showing up. That's why the blessing that's coming to you is different. It's not a random miracle, it's a harvest. You are not being blessed because you asked, you are being blessed because became a blessing. You have made heaven's priorities your own. You have lifted others up so selflessly, and now God is about to lift you up in ways that are beyond measure. Get ready, because the same people who saw you as a plan B are about to see God give you one divine support. Those who thought your kindness was weakness will witness your divine reward. God is repaying you not only for what you have given, but for as you gave, with joy, with humility, without expecting anything in return. In Luke 6:38, the Bible says, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." That's not just a pretty phrase, it's your reality this season. What you poured out when no one was pouring it into you is about to come back to you in a big way, multiplied. Blessings are about to pursue you, not because you demanded them, but because you incarnated. And more than that, you are not just receiving a blessing, you are becoming a blessing. Your very presence will change environments, your words will heal, your life will testify. You are entering places not just as a person, but as a response, as a light, as an overflowing divine vessel, because one day you were empty and yet you gave. Authenticity and standing out. Why being yourself is your greatest strength. Imagine an orchestra. Each instrument has its own unique sound, right? The violin doesn't try to sound like a trombone, nor the flute like a drum. Each one plays its own melody, and it's this difference that creates beautiful music. Being authentic and standing out is exactly that. Be the instrument God created you to be, without trying to sound like others. The text says something very important. You were never meant to blend in. From the beginning, there was something about you that was different, and deep down, you knew it. It's like having a hidden superpower. And of course, we try to fit in, don't we? We try to dim our shine, to silence our essence a little, just to be accepted in places where, in fact, we don't belong. But it never works. No matter how much you try to camouflage yourself, your calling, your true nature always appears. Even when the feeling of being alone hurt, when the silence was too loud, when rejection made you question your worth, you didn't bow down. You refused to shrink just to make others more comfortable. You didn't trade your authenticity for anyone's approval. And though you sometimes wondered why you felt so out of place, something in your spirit kept telling you, you were not called to fit in, you were called to lead. You were not rejected because you were wrong, but because you were right for the right thing. Your energy didn't fit their system. Your fire was too big for their little box. Your vision was too clear, your passion too deep, your purity too rare. And all of this threatened those who were more interested in comfort than conviction. They called you too much and too serious, when too spiritual, too intense. But in truth, you were too chosen to be diluted. You didn't let ridicule change your message. You didn't let loneliness break your loyalty to God. You remained yourself, even when the world told you to be someone else. And yes, it came at a cost. It cost you friendships, opportunities, maybe even relationships that you thought would last forever. But you made a decision. I'd rather lose the world than lose myself. You weren't after applause, you were after your own purpose. I wasn't looking for followers, but fidelity goodbye. This kind of the firm heaven honors. The truth is, when you stand up for something bigger, you will often stand alone. But God was watching. He saw you walk away from places where you could have committed. He saw you turn down opportunities that weren't aligned with your spirit. He saw the nights you cried because you felt invisible, misunderstood and excluded. And yet you refused to give in. You didn't edit your anointing to be more palatable. You didn't hide your calling for convenience. You didn't pretend to be less powerful just to make people feel more comfortable. You stood firm, you stood bold, you stood rooted, even when you were unpopular, even when you were uncomfortable. And now God is about to honor this stance of yours. He will raise up the very identity that people told you to change. The same anointing they didn't understand is the anointing He will use to bring about the breakthrough of nations. What they tried to shame you into is exactly what God is now showing you. Because by refusing to bend to fit in, you positioned yourself to stand up and stand out. You were not called to be part of the crowd. You were called to will lead it. You were never meant to echo the culture. You were designed to transform it. You no longer need to explain why you are different. You just need to walk in the fullness of who God created you to be. Because that next elevation will not come through imitation, but through your authenticity. If you are receiving this blessing, comment I receive in the comments, faith against facts. The power of believing even when everything screams otherwise. Imagine you are sailing in a boat and a huge storm appears out of nowhere. The waves are huge, the wind howls, and your boat begins to rock violently. All the facts say it is impossible, that you will sink. But faith, in this scenario, is you looking at the storm, and even though you are shaking, saying, "My boat is strong, and the one who guides me is even stronger." It is the ability to believe in the invisible, even when the visible screams the opposite. The text describes how you have been through storms that would have drowned many others. You have been in the middle of situations that made no sense at all, looking at facts that seemed to scream, "It's the end, give up." The numbers in your account didn't add up. The doors you expected to open remained closed. The results you prayed for simply didn't appear. Everything around you said, "It's over." Everything your eyes saw told you to throw in the towel, and yet you believed anyway. Your bank account said, "Deficiency," but you declared it abundance. The doctor said incurable, but you proclaimed treatment. His situation seemed stuck, but his spirit cried out, "Freedom is coming." This is not being deluded, nor is it denying reality. This is faith, and not an ordinary faith, but a faith that moves mountains, that changes the atmosphere, that alerts the sky. There were times when the facts were so loud, so compelling, that it would have been easy to agree with them, but you refused. You refused to bow to temporary circumstances. You did not allow natural reality to override the spiritual truth. You looked at the storm and said, "My God is still good." You looked at the empty table and said, "My God still provides." You looked at the delay and said, "My promise is still alive." This kind of faith scares the enemy. Do you know why? Because facts can be manipulated, but faith is an anchor. It doesn't change when the weather changes. It doesn't crumble when bad news arrives. It doesn't retreat when reality screams at it to surrender. Your faith held firm not because things were easy, but because you knew the character of the one who called you. You didn't just believe in God, you believed in God. This is much deeper, much different. Some people wait for everything to make sense before they can praise, but you praised in the desert. Others wait for the blessing to appear before they can believe, but you believed before the miracle even showed a sign of life. There are those who only trust when the situation is under control. But you trusted while everything around you was falling apart, and heaven never forgot that. Every time the enemy showed you proof that it wasn't going to happen, you responded with a God's promise. Every time your circumstances gave you evidence of failure, you retaliated with a Bible verse. You didn't let the devil's facts override the God's faithfulness. What you didn't see is that while you were speaking faith here on earth, heaven was sending angels. While you were declaring victory in a valley, the spiritual world was being shaken, because true faith doesn't just survive a test. It activates the sky, opens doors that no man can close, and sets miracles in motion. And that is exactly what your faith did. It's not just about what you endured, it's about what you believed while you endured. You did not wait for the manifestation to act as if it had already happened. You behaved as if it were already finished, because in spirit, it already was. Humility and divine elevation, how to stay small so God can make you great. Imagine you are a tree. To grow strong and tall, it is not enough to have deep roots. You also need to bend and bend so that the rain reaches the earth and nourishes your roots. Humility, it is exactly that. Your ability to bow down, to keep yourself low, so that God's blessing, which comes from above, can reach you and lift you up even more. The text mentions that you had every right to defend yourself. You had the evidence, the truth, and even the receipts to show who was right. But you didn't fall into the trap. You didn't retaliate with harsh words, nor did you get into petty fights. Even when you were right, you chose the silence instead of fighting. Even when they dishonored you, you chose dignity. Even when they lied about you, excluded you, or tried to tarnish your name, you kept your peace and let God handle your case. That wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. It was not passivity, it was power under control. You chose the lower path, not because you lacked strength, but because you had spiritual maturity. You understood something that most people do not, that true vindication, the proof that you were right, comes not from fighting on the human plane, but from letting heaven speak on your behalf. You could have bragged, you could have tried to prove everyone wrong when the tables turned in your favor, but instead you stayed humble, silent, and faithful. You didn't chase the spotlight, you stayed hidden until God said, "Now is your time." You didn't use your victories to shame others, you used them to glorify God. That's why your next phase of elevation is unstoppable, because it's not based on self-promotion, but is rooted in God's perfect timing. Your humility in private prepared you for the honor in public. You have proven that your character is real, not something you rent for an occasion, that your heart is submitted to God, not focused on yourself. You have shown God that He can trust you more, and that you will not let that change who you are, that you can be lifted up without becoming proud, that you can be praised without losing your servant posture. And here's the truth: heaven always exalts the humble. This is a spiritual law that cannot be ignored, cannot be broken. When you remain humble, God lifts you high. When you do not seek a throne, He gives you one. When you do not fight for a place at the table, He prepares one in the presence of your enemies. Buddy, you're about to be the undeniable proof of this principle. The promotion that is coming will not be the result of contacts, networks of influence, or manipulation. It will be the direct result of your humility. The doors that are about to open will not come from the hand of man, they will come from hand of God. Because while others were concerned with image, you were focused on integrity. While they were chasing fame, you were searching character. While they were trying to be seen, you were being molded. And now that God has seen your heart, He is about to show you His harvest. You remained humble when you could have flaunted. You remained silent when you could have exploded. You were gracious when you could have boasted. And because of that, this elevation will be pure, permanent, and powerful. Divine recognition and reward. God's eye sees what no one else sees. You know when you work really hard at something, you do your best in secret, and it seems like no one notices. Like when you clean your house impeccably, but no one compliments you, or when you do extra work on a project but the credit goes to someone else. It's natural to feel a little discouraged, but the point here is that God sees every detail, every sacrifice, every silent effort you make, and His recognition is what really matters. The text says that God not only sees what you do, but also as you do, every step you took in the dark. Remember the first point about obeying even when you couldn't see the way. Every one of those steps was noted. Every time you made a personal sacrifice that no one witnessed, every quiet yes you said when the world said no, every moment of quiet faith when you chose to believe, even when you didn't have all the answers, all of it was recorded in heaven. Think about it. This is not a small thing. It is something deep. While many people were seeking applause and public recognition, you were there in your daily life, choosing faith, obedience, and purity of heart. You were not showing off for an audience. You were living for one who sees everything. And this kind of life lived from the heart is what truly moves the heart of God. He saw you give even when you had little. Topic 4. He saw you stay pure even when the world pulls you away. Topic 3. He saw you believe in Him even when all the evidence says otherwise. Topic 6. And He saw you stay humble even when you have every reason to be exalted. Topic 7. Why is this so powerful? Because it shows God that your relationship with Him is not superficial. It is not an I love you if you give me things. It is an I love you and trust you no matter what. You have shown that you follow Him out of love, trust, and a deep covenant, and that heart posture is what He rewards. Divine recognition is not a pat on the back. It is active response from heaven. It's as if He's saying, I've seen it. I know what you've been through. I've seen your faithfulness. Now it's your turn to shine. This elevation you're experiencing now or that's coming is not a fluke. It's the visible manifestation of what you planted in the invisible. It is your harvest coming to light. You have proven to heaven that you do not follow God just for the blessings He can give, but for a true relationship based on love and trust. This secret dedication is what qualified you for promotion in the light. You did not have to force anything. You did not seek shortcuts. You did not make compromises. You simply lived your life of faith and obedience, trusting that God was in control. And now heaven is not only proud of you, heaven is responding. Prepare to see what God will do in public with what you have built in private. The recognition that comes from Him is pure, lasting, and brings with it an honor that exceeds any human applause. Preparation. Through trial. How hardships strengthen you for the next level. Imagine an athlete who is preparing for a big competition. He doesn't just train on sunny, easy days. He also runs in the rain, lifts heavy weights, and does exercises that leave him exhausted. Why does he do this? To get stronger, to withstand the pressure, and to be ready for victory. The trials in our lives are exactly that, a training from God to prepare us for something greater. The text makes it very clear. Those silences of God that you experienced, those nights when it seemed like He had disappeared, were not a punishment. They were preparation. God was not absent. He was watching. He was watching how you would react without the visible blessings, the clear miracles, and the loud recognition. And you, my friend, passed the test, not because it was perfect, but because you remained firm. Think of it as a process of refinement. Do you know how gold is put in the fire to remove all impurities and become more pure and valuable? Trials and times of waiting are like that fire. God was molding you, purifying you, strengthening you for what was to come. You may have thought, why is this happening to me? Why so much difficulty and silence? But God was building something in you. He knew that if you could trust Him in the silence, you wouldn't lose your head when the volume of life increased, when blessings came flooding in. If you could keep your feet on the ground when no one was applauding you, you wouldn't get cocky when the spotlight came. If you could worship Him in the valley, from scarcity or pain, you would remain humble and grateful on top of the mountain of prosperity. So it wasn't about how much you could take, but about who you were becoming through resistance. Through every tear, every silent prayer, every step of faith, you were transforming yourself into the person God needed you to be at the next level. You were developing a character that is the foundation for any true and lasting elevation. And now that you have been refined in silence, God is about to speak loudly through you, through miracles, through elevation that you never imagined, through doors that will open without you even having to knock. That same silence that once made you question everything is about to become the main stage of your most powerful testimony and impactful. It is proof that everything you endured was worth it, because it prepared you for the extraordinary. Character as the basis for promotion. Why true greatness starts from within. Imagine you are going to build a very tall tower. No matter how beautiful or luxurious it is up there, if the foundation is weak, it will fall. Character is the foundation of your life, and God, as the greatest builder, knows that true and lasting promotion, it doesn't just come from your talent, from what you know how to do, but from who you are inside. The text shows us that you had every chance to show yourself, to exalt yourself, to flex your muscles when things went well, but you chose humility. Remember topic 7. You proved that you could carry a heavy weight of responsibility without being dazzled by the attention, that you could walk with authority without becoming arrogant, that you could have power without losing your pureza. Topic 3. Many people think that elevation, success, comes only from what they can show, from their performance, from their personal marketing. But God looks at the heart. He does not promote based solely on gifts and abilities. He promotes based on purity of heart, that's it, integrity of character. Why? Because the higher He takes you, the more intense the temptations become. If you can't keep yourself on the ground, how will you resist when you're up high? You have proven that your character is something rooted, not something you just rent for an occasion. That your heart is submitted to God, not focused on your own desires. You have shown Him that you can be trusted with more, that you can be lifted up without being puffed up with pride, that you can receive praise without losing your posture as a humble servant. And the truth is that heaven always exalts the humble. This is a spiritual law that cannot be broken. When you keep yourself low in your own eyes, God lifts you up. When you do not seek a throne, He gives you one. When you do not fight for a place at the table, He prepares one for you in the presence of your own enemies. My friend, you are about to be living proof of this principle. The promotion that is coming your way will not come from connections, manipulation, or who you know. It will be direct result of His humility and character. The doors that are about to open will not be opened by human hands, but by God's own hand. Because while others were concerned with image, you were focused on integrity. While they ran after applause, you sought character. While they were trying to be seen, you were being molded in secret. And now that God has seen your heart and the solid foundation you have built, He is about to display your harvest to the world. What you have cultivated in silence will be manifested loudly. This journey you have taken, chosen one, has been seen by God in every detail. Your obedience in the darkness, your faithfulness in the silence, your purity, your generosity, your authenticity, your unwavering faith, and your humility, all of these have qualified you for this moment. You have not just received a blessing, you have become a blessing. If this message resonated with your spirit and you feel like you are entering your season of elevation and prosperity, we have something special for you. Check out our prosperity playlist to delve even deeper and receive more words of life and elevation. There you will find content that will nourish your spirit and guide you on this journey of growth and blessings. Don't forget to enjoy this video, subscribe on the channel so as not to miss any powerful messages, and leave your comment below by typing 77 to signal that you are ready and aligned to receive this divine elevation with humility and purpose. Your participation helps us bring this word to even more hearts. May God continue to bless you abundantly.